Hello and welcome back to Perspectives. On today's show, is the UK starting to get serious at last about protecting its Sikh population? A powerful piece of legislation is now being used to deal with agents of the Indian regime targeting British Sikhs. In the Punjab, once again the RSS goes head-to-head with the Sikh community over its continuing control over the SGPC and its clearly political latest Jathedar appointments. And in Singapore, we take a look how Sikhs have risen to become pillars of society in this most modern of societies. And we wish the Sikh community a happy new year as the first day of Chet passes in the Nanak Shahi calendar. All this and more on today's show. But joining me as always for Perspectives is our very own correspondent in Canada, James Cousineau. Good morning, James.
Good morning, Angus, and good morning to our viewers out there. As you'll notice behind me, kind of a different backdrop. We're going to be playing with some different settings throughout the week as we move towards going live. So again, we're just working out some bugs and playing with it. So by all means, put your comments in the comment section. Let us know what you think as the week goes on. We'd love to know, but also remember that it's important that we know what time zone you're watching from so we can try to fit the show into the most popular time zone or just try to adjust accordingly and work it out. So yeah, again, don't forget the comment section. Thanks everyone, and back to you, Angus.
Indeed, and going forward together, James and I will be bringing you our perspectives on the daily news affecting the Sikh community across the world, and we will indeed be taking a look at loads of great comments at the end of the show, so stay tuned for that. Right, James, let's get the show underway. What are you going to start us off with this morning?
Well, there's some people who I follow on Facebook or who follow me on Facebook who are actually Sikhs from Singapore. And I thought, how much of a population, what is the history there? And I thought I would bring you along for that visit to find out exactly what the history is and a quick story here about it. Now, of course, we know that the Sikh community has a very heavy presence in many countries, including Canada, the UK, the US. But did you know the history of the Sikh community in Singapore? So let's take a look here, because from the colonial roots, they have grown into be a part of the woven fabric of that society. And it should be no surprise to any of you watching that, of course, human services and community service is a big part of that. So let's take a look at this here. Within the vibrant tapestry of Singapore's multicultural society lies a compelling story of resilience and integration. The history of the Sikh community, from their early arrival as part of the British colonial forces to their present-day prominence. Sikhs have woven themselves into the fabric of the nation. The foundations of the Sikh presence in Singapore were laid during the 19th century with the establishment of the SPC, or the Sikh Police Contingent, and that was in 1881, so it shows how far back that goes. And there's actually a marked beginning of tradition that services continue to this day. However, the Sikh presence predates the SPC, with records of state prisoners being deported to Singapore as early as 1850. Now, this is something, excuse me folks, this is something, of course, that we see to this day in terms of, we don't know what type of state prisoners they were. They could have been political, they could have been just people with dissenting voices. So again, it's interesting to see that history. So the early Sikh settlers played a crucial role in the development of Singapore's security infrastructure, and that came from Dr. Lee Mai Chen, and he is a historical researcher and really focuses on Singapore history. Their dedication and discipline were highly valued, setting a precedent for future generations. So again, it really shows how they've taken the opportunities to integrate with society, but also to become valued members of that society by all different people. As the community grew, the Gurdwaras became vital hubs for religious and social gatherings, fostering a strong sense of identity. Organizations like the Singapore Khalsa Association, or SKA, further solidified community bonds, organizing cultural events and promoting Sikh traditions. So it's important to note that although the Gurdwaras were very important to the Sikh community, they also hosted events for the rest of the community as well at those locations, so that they were able to bring them in, to build that relationship and to foster an understanding. So I think that was just an amazing way to do it. And of course, it's what we see around the world. The Gurdwaras were more than just places of worship, says Harpreet Singh, the community leader. They are centers of community support where we come together to celebrate our heritage and to support one another. Again, very much a part of the Sikh beliefs and their traditions. So today, Sikhs are represented across all sectors of Singaporean society, excelling in business, education, and public service, of course. Their contributions are a testament to their adaptability and commitment to their adopted home. Recently, Deputy Prime Minister Lawrence Wong highlighted the Sikh community's significant contributions to Singapore, emphasizing how they have retained their culture, faith, and unique identity. So again, you can read the rest of the article on the Savage website. But again, that is just a great shot of community coming together. And again, going back to as early as 1850, Angus, to build that community and such a strong and rich history in the culture of Singapore.
Yes, it's. We talk about the Sikh diaspora in so many different parts of the world, and it always follows a very common theme: is that these Sikh families, and pioneered by the Sikh men who go out to these far-flung nations at really through the 19th century, a time that was of course a great challenge for anybody trying to establish a life anywhere on the planet. Never mind in the more civilized countries. Singapore in the 1850s was basically, it was a fishing village on a mosquito-infested swampy island. It was a very, very challenging place to even begin to build a life. I would refer our audience to one of the podcasts I did a few weeks ago about Bhai Maharaj Singh, who was one of the final stalwarts, the final warriors to keep standing up against the British Empire at the fall of the Sikh Empire in 1849. He stood up to the British as long as he physically was capable. He was the last man standing, as they say. And he was eventually captured by the British. He was betrayed, actually, but he was captured by the British. He was sent to Singapore in, I think it was 1850. I might have got my years slightly wrong, but it's around about 1850. And he ended up in Outram Park Jail. And he spent his final years as an 80-something-year-old man, just dying of old age and cancer and cataracts. And he had a terrible final few years, but it was his Sikh faith that made him last well into his 80s in solitary confinement, no daylight in his cell. So there's a bit of a mixed history here in Singapore for the Sikh community, but that in itself is, and I'd say do watch that podcast because it's a heroic story of one of the final standing warriors of the Sikh Empire by Maharaj Singh, who ended up in Singapore. But of course, since then, yes, the Sikh community have moved out to Singapore, and as they have done everywhere else in the world, they have made a huge success of their lives. They continue this entrepreneurial spirit, which of course is one of the key tenets of being a Sikh, is that you have to make an honest living. And boy, do these guys do that. Wherever they end up in the world, they build these new lives from almost nothing. And they build fantastic businesses, communities, and they create their own community within these societies, and they usually make a massive success of it. And Singapore is no exception. As I say, Singapore certainly in the 19th century was one heck of was a challenge, as indeed Canada was, and then the US and all these other places where the Sikh community have grown in stature. And it's unsurprising, James, of course, to hear that they are becoming pillars of modern society. Singapore actually is one of, I would say, the leading societies on the planet. It's a fabulous place. I spent a lot of time in Singapore. It's not to everybody's taste. It is a very particular society, but it works very well. It's a fabulous place to live and work, and it really is, to me, one of the leading societies on the planet. And it's no surprise that the Sikh community have formed a key foundation pillar of that society, James. So again, a fantastic story.
Absolutely, and it just shows how interwoven they are around the world. So I just wanted to give that special shout out to all of our Sikh followers and watchers in Singapore. Don't forget to leave your comments and give us a shout out, because we want to know how many are out there watching us. And if not, then spread the word, because we always love more viewers, more subscribers. And with that, of course, we know the leadership and the interwoven fabric there. But when you take it back to India, then there seems to be that disconnect between the government and others when it comes to the Sikh community and honoring that rich heritage, the culture, and the ability for them to contribute to society. And they just seem to be interfered with at every step and every turn of the corner. There's something new that they have to face and challenges that meet them. And that's no different with the Navi Mumbai Sikhs, and they are opposing changes that have come in from the SGPC. And they have written a very strong worded letter, very vocal community that is standing up and saying that the replacement of the Jathedar appointments is just not in line with where it should be or with the culture and the history. Now, the Sikh community in the broader state of Maharashtra has registered its strong disapproval with the recent decisions made by the SGPC concerning the appointment of Jathedars, the high priests of the Sikh temporal seats. This opposition has been formally conveyed to them through the letter issued by the Supreme Council of Navi Mumbai Gurdwaras. The central demand, of course, being that they articulated in their communication is the immediate reinstatement of the Jathedars who were previously holding these esteemed positions. Furthermore, of course, the community has voiced strong objections to what they perceive as appointments driven by political motivations rather than adherence to religious traditions and community consensus. And of course, we know the value of making sure that the community is involved in decisions that impact that community. And they are trying to take those decisions and that respect out of the hands of those people. The strong opposition from the Sikh community and of the Navi Mumbai and Maharashtra is rooted in deep-seated concerns regarding the legitimacy and process employed by the SGPC in making these critical appointments. The community firmly believes that the selection and removal of Jathedars who hold significant spiritual and temporal authority within Sikhism must be conducted in strict accordance with established Gurmat traditions. And that should be just a no-brainer to anybody, that of course it should be reflective of that. The conviction underscores the paramount importance placed on tradition and community consensus within the Sikh faith, particularly concerning leadership roles. And again, it goes back to, if you're going to lead a community, it's best to be a part of that community. And instead, what they're trying to do is offer up more divisiveness, more separation, and more tension there. And I don't believe that that is a fair or equitable way to work. Now, the voice of the Supreme Council of the Navi Mumbai has clearly indicated that a failure on the part of the SGPC to address their concerns and to uphold what they perceive as fundamental Panthic interests will likely lead to strong and sustained opposition. And again, rightfully so, because it's just not, it's not conducive to that community in any way. The politics and the abrasiveness of it just goes against everything that is and should be a part of that community and humanity. So this report that we have compiled here will, again, it is quite lengthy, so I didn't want to cover it all. I just wanted to cherry pick some of the points of it and allow you the opportunity to take a look at the whole report as well through the Savage website. And again, so you can see important dates, though, that we'll take a look at here. And February the 25th was the removal of Gianni Harpreet Singh. That was the Takht Sri Damdama Sahib. And again, it shows who was involved in that. So again, we look at March 7th. March 7th again, March 7th again, March 7th again, and then February of 2025, and then just up to the last few days here on March the 15th, the Panthic ECATH rejects the appointments, and that was all three Takhts that were included in that, and it's Gianni Kuldeep Singh Gargaj, sorry if I said that wrong, and Baba Tek. Those are who are the individuals involved in that. So again, there's also other issues that have come up throughout this whole dispute, and it's time for them to stand up and to have protests and boycotts, and that's exactly what they're planning, Angus. It is just another challenge that the Sikh community will face, and I have no doubt will come out on top of, because they handle it with such diplomacy and in such a democratic fashion to try and deal with it peacefully and solve the issues at the table, as opposed to through violence, Angus.
Yeah, the politics of the Punjab are so deeply complex because, of course, there's just, let's call it the mainstream political infrastructure, the likes of the Shiromani Akali Dal, and then, of course, there is the structure, the politics of the Sikh community and their various organisations like the SGPC, which was set up in 1925, and, of course, the Takhts, the 5 Takhts, which sit as those panthic seats of power. And the Akal tax sitting on, of course, on the top of that pile. The problem, of course, has been in this complex web of politics is politics always attract the worst of society and rarely the best of society. And unfortunately, I would say the five Takhts have been established a very long time ago to administer the Sikh community and provide the Sikh community with a voice, and of course through its own unique form of democratic process to run the community and the affairs of the community. Unfortunately, it's come up against the RSS in India. It came up against the British and then the RSS. Now, the British, over a lengthy period of time, ended up with a good working relationship with the Sikh community, and they helped establish the SGPC to assist the 5 Takhts to administer the Sikh community. As I refer back to that Gurdwaras Act in 1925 when the SGPC was set up. But of course, when that gave the Sikh community a voice, all was well and good. But then along came the RSS and decided, no, that we don't like the Sikh community. They are an existential threat to our control of India and our political agenda and our political movement. So they've gone head to head with the Sikh community for a very long time. And of course, they've done everything in their power to remove the political power and the political voice of the Sikh community. And that is why since then, the RSS have done everything they can to infiltrate and destroy and undermine all these organisations of Sikh power. And that, of course, started with the SGPC. So they've infiltrated the SGPC, and in turn, the SGPC has this alleged control over the 5 Takhts. And unfortunately now, as essentially they control the SGPC, it means they can then appoint and sack the Jathedars of these Takhts at will. So whenever they find a Jathedar that doesn't align with the RSS agenda or the interests of the RSS, then they just get rid of him and replace him with somebody who does. And this is what we're continually seeing. And this is what's creating this absolute mess within the Punjab, where the Sikh community are turning away from these organisations. They're not turning away from the Takhts, but they're certainly turning away from the SGPC. And it's created this vicious circle where the more that the Sikh community turn away from the SGPC, the easier it has been for the RSS to then take full control through the Badal family and other methods to take control of the SGPC. And of course, the SGPC holds so much power over Sikh politics. And the RSS has been able to move in, which has removed it further and further away from the Sikh community, and therefore the Sikh community, who actually elect the members and the president of the SGPC, they're turning away from it, so they can't elect it. So it's easy for RSS-aligned members who do stay within the SGPC to ensure that their man is in control, and therefore controls Punjab politics from the religious perspective. So this is the continuing problem, and here we go, here it is once again, and this again is a bit of a revenge action, because of course the Jathedar, the Akal Takht, the most powerful man in Sikh religious politics, he declared Sukhbir Badal as Tankaya, as in he had been acting against the interests of the Panth. And so by declaring him Tankaya, effectively, in the end, he was thrown out. This is an act of revenge by the RSS. They came in and they waited and they sacked 3 of the Jathedars of the Takhts, and now they're replacing them once again with their own men. And it's just ever ongoing, and it can only ever stop, James, as we keep saying. This will only ever end when the Sikh community have their own sovereign nation. They have their own geographical boundary where they can just say no to the RSS. Just leave us alone. Let us run our own affairs in our own land where we have full 100% control. That is what Khalistan is all about. It's not so much, it's not even ironically, it's not even about geography. It's about control of the community. It's about taking back control of their own affairs. It's all about autonomy. And again, it goes all the way back to Bhindranvale and his demands for simple, again, that wasn't about Khalistan. Bhindranvale was just about autonomy. It was about, can we please have control over our own affairs? We would just want control over our rivers, our administration, our own agricultural policy making. That's all it was all about. And that is essentially what Khalistan is about. It is about the freedom to make our own choices in our own land. And that is the only way that this RSS infiltration and control is ever going to be stopped, and the Sikhs get back their own political voice, they get back control over their own affairs, James.
Absolutely. And I mean, you know, what nation and what culture wouldn't insist upon that? I mean, you've got to have control over it. And for anybody to step in and try to subvert that or to take that away is just appalling, Angus.
Yeah, it's extremely frustrating, and of course, so many Sikhs in the Punjab just get totally disillusioned. We talk about disillusionment here in the West, where we all complain about our politicians, but we have it lucky compared to the Punjab, because the one political party, the Shiromani Akali Dal, that was originally set up by the community to represent the community politically along the traditional political lines from the British Empire days, the Shiromani Akali Dal has been completely and utterly taken over by the RSS through the Badal family and others. So even their basic political party does no longer and has not represented the community for decades. This is why Amritpal Singh, for example, had to set up his own party, this breakaway new party to represent the Sikh community, politically speaking. So whatever the Sikh community keep doing, the RSS keep infiltrating, stamping down on it, and once again trying to prevent the voice of the Sikhs ever reaching the surface. This isn't democratic. This isn't what democracy is about. This is just totalitarian control. Once again, James, as I said, it can only be Khalistan.
Absolutely, Angus. I couldn't agree more.
Right, James. On that note, let's move on to my first story, and let's stay with politics. We're going to jump over all the way to here in the UK. This is about British politics. And transnational oppression, this is a subject that we talk a lot about, of course, because it does affect the community, particularly the Khalistan movement, so directly and so dangerously, wherever it may be, whether it's Canada, the US, or certainly here in the UK. Now, the Sikh Federation UK, which has formed a really powerful stalwart to stand up against Indian transnational oppression, and they really have taken the lead in so many political moves to first of all protect the local, the British Sikh community, and by extension the international community through the Sikh Federation International. But also they've been really a really powerful lobby group to the British government about the main issues affecting the Sikh community, whether it's Jagtar Singh Johal, whether it is transnational oppression, or whether it is just simple protecting the British Sikhs from threats from all directions, but particularly from India. Now the latest piece of lobbying is to leverage a piece of legislation which was brought in at the end of 2023. So only about a year ago, 12 months ago, this piece of legislation was brought in it was a blanket piece of legislation just to prevent British citizens against a foreign threat, whatever that foreign threat was, and whichever citizen, whichever community you stood in. But of course, this piece of legislation is particularly relevant and pertinent to the Sikh community. Now, they've sent out a warning to Indian agents, to those who operate in the United Kingdom on behalf of India. And they said, look, all those who've been involved in any form of transnational oppression against the Sikh community, you better watch out. Because they're referring particularly, and they're directing this warning actually to intelligence officers based in the Indian High Commissions across the UK, and of course the main one is in London, but they do exist in most of the British cities, the largest cities across the UK. And they're sending a warning to say, look, you better watch out, because this new piece of legislation which has been established, if you are caught providing intelligence on Sikhs here in the UK back to India, you could face up to 14 years in prison, an unlimited fine, and you can be kicked out and deported back to India under Section 3 of this new Act, National Security Act 2023. And it does say if you're involved firstly in passing intelligence back, or you're involved in foreign interference that is regarded as pro-India targeting Sikh activists, you better watch this video, because foreign interference is defined very broadly, deliberately so that it can encompass a whole range of acts that are anti-Sikh and anti-British. The authorities only need to prove a foreign hand involved in it and establish intent. So again, the threshold has been lowered, that it's going to make it a lot easier for the British government and British law enforcement to catch you and to charge you and to find you guilty of this, and therefore you will face a very lengthy prison sentence, at the end of which you will be kicked out and sent back to India. So the Sikh Federation UK representatives had a meeting recently, and they provided a detailed briefing to the British government's KC, that's a King's Council. It is the most senior members of the legal profession. They advise the government. They're called King's Council, previously the Queen's Council, QCs. But this KC, Jonathan Hall, is the government's counsel. And they had a meeting to advise this chap about what's been going on in the Sikh community and how this piece of legislation is going to be a vital tool to combat this. And they referred to a review of state threats that actually happened in Germany, where they have a similar law, and that has been used successfully to round up at least half a dozen individuals in the last 5 years who were arrested, charged, and they are now serving prison sentences for working with Indian intelligence and spying on Sikh activists on the basis of Germany's experience. So it's been used in Germany successfully. So they're saying, and this is a warning to Indian agents operating in the UK, look, you get up to that here in the UK, you too are going to end up like these guys in Germany. You're going to end up in prison, serving lengthy prison sentences. And as they said, if the Sikh community can persuade the police, investigative agencies and the Attorney General, who's the key legal person in this, who must personally sanction all prosecutions, then these guys are going to face the full force of the law. Now, James, I'm going to play you a quick video. This is a video that's been put together by Jonathan Hall, the QC, the Queen's Council, the King's Council now, it's King Charles, not Queen Elizabeth. So this is a video put together by Jonathan Hall and the Sikh Federation UK, and it is essentially sending out this warning. It also features the Home Secretary of the time. This was actually from the last government, the Conservative government. It was James Cleverly who was the Home Secretary at the time. But this sends out a warning. Let me play you this video that they've put together over this.
Today, because of the National Security Act coming into force, the UK is a safer place. The threats that we have to defend against evolve, they change, and our response has to change with it. So whether it's hostile states trying to poison people on the streets of our country, interfere in our democracy, or undermine our way of life, we now have a stronger arsenal of responses that we can detect, disrupt, deter those who would do us harm. The police, our security services now have more tools and powers at their disposal to tackle those that would do us harm. Those agents of foreign governments, those acting against us, can be arrested, they can be charged, they can be imprisoned. That's what this act means. It makes sure that we are better able to defend ourselves.
In July this year, we passed the new National Security Act. And today, the new offences and operational powers brought in by this Act have come into force. Now that means that the tools and powers we created to detect, deter and disrupt threats from those acting on behalf of foreign states against the United Kingdom and its interests are now available for use. We've now made it a crime to provide material assistance to a foreign intelligence service. To put it plainly, people caught doing this can now be arrested and prosecuted. The laws in this Act update espionage offences. This brings them into the modern age. So much so that for the first time, it is now an offence to be an undeclared spy materially assisting the activities of a foreign intelligence service in the United Kingdom. There are plenty of core measures of the Act that have come into force today and can now be used. We drafted this Act and made these new laws to make the UK a safer place for you, and from today they are available and I'm confident they will be used.
So that was Jonathan Hall, the final speaker, and James Cleverly to start with. And a lot of this was actually aimed particularly at Russia, and we had an incident of a Russian defector who was murdered by the Russian state, and that was the reference to poisoning, for example. British, it wasn't a British citizen, but anyway, but that related to Russia. But of course, this is equally effective against India. There is a reference also to the fact that the Indian agents, as we've often said and reported, they operate. The raw agents operate out of the commissions under the immunity of the diplomatic infrastructure. So again, this is why the warning has been sent to the commissions in London and other cities that even if you operate outside of the commissions, if you are found guilty, if you are seen to be acting against the Sikh community, then you will still be charged. Obviously, there will be diplomatic immunity for those who might claim that, but they will certainly be deported if that is the case, and there will be massive diplomatic incident. But if they are caught outside of diplomatic immunity, they will be charged under this new Act, James. So this is a powerful piece of legislation, which now means that Indian agents better be looking over their shoulders, because British law enforcement will be watching them very closely.
Absolutely, and it reminds me of steps that are being initiated, and this could actually be even stronger than what we've seen in Canada and the US when it comes to chasing down and prosecuting these foreign actors or those assisting the foreign actors and agents. And it's about raising that awareness. It's about protecting citizens. It is about putting a foot down and saying enough is enough. We're not going to tolerate the threats to our citizens. And like he clearly stated in the video, that it is about protecting each other. It's about making sure that the tools are there in the toolbox that can be taken out and used to prevent this sort of thing and to prosecute to the fullest extent of the law those who are perpetrating such actions. And, to take it a step further, of course, they, like Canada, are definitely taking steps to really educate local and small law enforcement agencies as well. Because let's face it, they'll get a foothold into where they are not expected to be, outside the major cities. And those police agencies or police forces may not have the training, the equipment, and the technology to really crack down. So the more that they are educated, then they can watch in their smaller communities as well, and just make a big difference, hopefully.
Absolutely, and tools like this piece of legislation, are essential for the British law enforcement to have the ability to deal with these threats. So well done to the Sikh Federation UK once again, acting so powerfully and lobbying for tools like this to be established. So anyway,
That's right.
Fingers crossed that will help deter the agents from attacking the community here in the UK. Right, let's move on to my second story, and of course it is a Happy New Year, James. This was, again, all part of our education about the Sikh community, and it turns out last Friday, the 14th of March, was indeed the new year for the Sikh community. In the Sikh calendar, March the 14th marks the first day of Chet. This is the first month of the Nanak Shahi calendar that was referenced in the Gurbani, that's the Sikh scriptures. Now, Vaisakhi, which actually happens in April, that is the birth of the Khalsa festival. I'll talk about that in a moment. But it's quite often that Vaisakhi, and I was guilty of this, Vaisakhi is often mistakenly called the Sikh New Year. It's not. It is actually March the 14th, the first day of Chet. And of course, Sikhs across the world will be marking, or did mark, the occasion by visiting their Gurdwaras, bringing in the new year with prayers and meditation. And so this calendar, this Mool Nanak Shahi calendar, otherwise known as the MNSC, well, the Mool Nanak Shahi calendar, the NS, combines the original Nanak Shahi calendar as approved and introduced by the SGPC in 1999, commemorating the 300th anniversary of the Khalsa Sajna Divas, that's Vaisakhi, It also accurately fixes the date for Bandi Shor Divas. Now, Bandi Shor Divas is it translates as the Day of Liberation, which again is another historic day in the Sikh calendar. It's a celebration commemorating the day when the sixth Guru, Guru Hargobind Ji, and 52 Hindu kings were released from Gwalior Fort after they had been imprisoned by the Mughal Emperor Jahangir. So there you go, another important day in the Sikh calendar. Now, the Sikhs have permanently synchronised this the original Mool Nanak Shahi calendar with the CE calendar. So they've actually merged the calendars together so they all sort of align more conveniently. Now, this is the only historically, scientifically and Gurbani based Sikh calendar, so it's this sort of the official one, should we say, free of Bikrami or any other influence. Knowing the history, the timeline of events, evolution, resolutions and hukmnamas are crucial to knowing, of course, when the factual Sikh history and preserving the culture and heritage of the community. And so, as you can see on your screen, this calendar, which looks dreadfully complicated, but it's not. It's actually pretty simple. You can see at the top, the first day of Chet is Basant or spring, which is, March the 14th. And then, of course, Vaisakhi, which occurs also in spring, but that is midway through April, which then evolves through into summer, Jet Ha, into the monsoon season. Of course, it is originally linked to the Punjab region. Savan Badon, that's the monsoon or Baras, and then through to autumn or fall, as you say in the States, through Asu and Katak, and then back into winter, and then the snow periods over the winter periods. Himkar, of course, being the snowy months. So there you go, James. It's fascinating. This calendar, as we say, it's a happy new year to our community. I will talk about Vaisakhi next month because I think it's the 14th of April is when Vaisakhi occurs. Of course, that is this massive celebration that's celebrated right across the community, right across the diaspora, and particularly in the Punjab, where they have these wonderful parades and these wonderful celebrations. Vaisakhi, of course, is celebrating the birth of the Khalsa. That was the 10th and final living, or the human guru, Guru Gobind Singh Ji, when he established the Khalsa. And that was, of course, when most of the traditional orders of the Sikh religion then evolved into the modern day into its modern day form. But there we go, James. We have to wish the community Happy New Year from March 14th. That was last Friday, the first day of Chet, and then next month we will be celebrating Vaisakhi. It's all very it's all very complicated, but we're learning it, James, on our own educational journey about the community.
Absolutely, Angus, and it's always great to learn new things. As I said, this is a learning journey for us, and we take everybody along with us who may not be familiar with the Sikh calendars and all of that. So again, it's great. It's a lot of fun. And when it comes to Vaisakhi, of course, one of the largest Vaisakhi parades outside of India actually happens here in Surrey. So, of course, I'll be there as I always am, and we'll be bringing you reports from the Vaisakhi Day celebrations in Surrey, British Columbia on this show. So again, it's, a lot of exciting things coming up, Angus.
Yeah, fascinating stuff. So, as I say, April the 14th, I think, is Vaisakhi this year. So looking forward to that one as well, the big celebrations. Great, James. On that note, let's move on to our comments column. And loads of comments came in over the last few days. And I did a podcast with Bhajan Singh Binder on Friday last week, and it was, again, another fascinating podcast. It was looking at a lot of the history, and the theme of this podcast was all about how the Indian state has been targeting the Sikh community for obviously a very long time, and the length that the Indian state has gone to over the years to attack the community, whether domestically in India or, of course, across the diaspora. And again, whether that was the Air India attack or whatever it happened to be, whether it was low level or these more high profile attacks. And Bhajan Singh Binder was actually convinced, he said, based on the intentions of what the Indian state have been up to over the last few decades, he is absolutely convinced that it is likely there could be another massive false flag attack on the community in the foreseeable future. So it was a bit of a warning to the community to basically stay vigilant. So it's quite a sobering discussion. He'd actually just got back from a fascinating conference in Switzerland where the young amongst the Sikh community were invited to take part and speak about their understanding of certainly the history, and of course going forward, taking the community forward. Now, in the comments, again, we had a lot of comments after that podcast, and the Juicer made a few comments, and he actually targeted, or say he, I don't know, it might be a she, but anyway, the Juicer targeted Bindranvali, Sant Janel Bindranvali ji. And he said, or the Juicer said, I think Bindranvali should be called a Sant, or that Sant tradition. He doesn't get it. He said, what he was saying, he said, look, you people can't see the truth. He claims that Bindranvali's Gurdwaras were the only ones not attacked in 1984, and you claim that Bindranvali was a double agent. And then you're saying, and then about the attacks, the imminent attacks on the Sikhs that Bhajan Singh Binda was worried about was about to happen. He said, well, look, evacuate people and anything of importance. Don't do what Bindranvali did. And how do you know this? It's a game by the government, and I sense you or anyone else is being played. Thanks. Well, yeah, this was quite a controversial comment, and I agree with you. It could well be that we're being played. We always have to take everything that we read, see and hear with a pinch of salt. That means we need to be suspicious, we need to verify and corroborate it. So maybe we are being played by many directions. Who knows? Always a very hard game to play. But I think the key theme of your comments was about Bindranvali, and I think this will upset a lot of people because Bindranvali is held up in huge esteem. In fact, you will find his portrait in every Gurdwara around the world. He, of course, laid down his life with his colleagues on those dreadful attacks on the Harmandir Sahib in 1984 in June. He died, I have to say, a heroic martyr's death. He stood up against more than 1,000 Indian troops. He literally faced a line of tanks when he stood with his compatriots in the Akal Takht, in the complex, the Harmandir Sahib, and he literally faced down the barrels of, I think it was 5 tanks, who then just fired shell after shell after shell into the building that he was holed up in, and he finally laid down his life. I have to say, in the most heroic fashion. He stood as an absolute prime example, firstly, not of just the military courage and heroism of the Sikh community, but also standing up for human rights and his principles. He was prepared to lay down his life in this most heroic fashion. So yeah, I think I've no doubt that the community will be pretty upset by the claims that he was a double agent. I certainly personally, having myself researched deeply into his final days, and of course the months leading up to that, and his final days up until that dreadful attack on the Golden Temple, I would be very surprised if he was a double agent, because frankly, what was in it for him? Not a lot at the end, other than the heroic martyrdom. And now Humanity responds about a few things, but what you did say, and this is a key point I wanted to raise here, the attack in 1984 was planned long before Sant Ji was based there, because of course Sant Ji finally sought sanctuary in the Harmandir complex. That's why the Indian government attacked it. So Humanity says, no, the attack in 84 was planned long before, and indeed it was Operation Shanti. Refer back to my podcast, many podcasts, particularly with Bhajan Singh Binda, if you want to know the history. Yes, these attacks were planned a lot, many years before, in fact 7 or 8 years at least, before the attack was actually incurred. And then Hat B says, the Indian government attacked many other Gurdwaras where Sant Janel Singh Bindranvali was not. It was not against one man or a few. It was an attack on Sikhi to scare and silence Sikhs, absolutely. And then K Singh comes in with a final warning regarding Juicer. Look, careful Sikhs, he's a poisonous. Now, do you mean Brahmin snake? I'm not sure. Maybe there is a word Brahmin. I don't. Basically, it's a warning saying that the Juicer is not a Sikh by all accounts. He is up to mischief, James. So basically, so this comment is to sum up these series of comments is that the Juicer believes Bindranvali is not what he claimed he was. He was actually a double agent, and the community have actually waded back in and say, look, no, sorry, but you clearly must be an agent yourself of the RSS.
Absolutely, and we're seeing it so much more, Angus, that the agents and the bots and everything else are just working overtime these days. And I've noticed it even on my personal sites or my personal accounts on Twitter and other things. I've just really, really seen a huge uptick in the amount of bots and misinformation. And let's look at the reality of it, is that we, both between yourself and myself, Angus, we've done a lot of research, we've evaluated a lot of information, a lot of data, and at the end of the day, it's, you know, it just doesn't go with what this person is saying, just doesn't go with any of the information or facts that we have. And believe me, if there was something more nefarious here, it would have been in a lot of the documentation that we've reviewed, or we would have at least stumbled across it throughout the thousands of documents and other things that we've researched.
Indeed. So thank you to the Juicer for your comment. I think, as I said, I personally hold Bindranvali in a huge high esteem because of, so I've researched his story and that final heroic stand in the Hamda Sahib. And I would be very surprised if he was a double agent. But I also temper that by saying, who knows? At the end of the day, it did happen a number of years ago. We must always keep an open mind and we respect your opinion. Thank you for your opinion. But clearly it is counter the general narrative. But thank you anyway for your comment on that. Danny has been very active on the comments, and we must. I've picked one particular comment actually, which I thought actually was quite interesting. And this does again refer back to one of the previous podcasts I did with Bhajan Singh Binder, and it was, I have to say, it was still to me one of the most extraordinarily interesting podcasts I've ever done, and it was about actually this massive concept of the Soviet Union invading Afghanistan, moving in towards Pakistan, and tying up with Indira Gandhi's India with this huge conspiracy to assassinate President Zia of Pakistan, to then a false flag it against the Sikh community that would then justify Indira Gandhi to destroy the Sikh community and create war with Pakistan, invade Pakistan from both sides, and then create this bridge between Moscow and Delhi and create what effectively would have been this enormous Soviet Union empire that would have stretched all the way from Moscow down to the Indian Ocean and encompassed India within it. Danny says Indira Gandhi worked in tandem with General Zia, who became President Zia al-Haq of Pakistan, whom she met many times. Sikh stood like an obstacle in their two-nation control. He hit from the west, she hit from the east. That is exactly right, Danny. On that, I totally agree with you. And do watch that podcast if you want to know the details about this. But basically, General Zia and the Sikh community literally stood as this one obstacle in the way of this grand plan, this enormous, I have to say, quite frightening plan between the Soviets and Indira Gandhi to take control of that whole area, that whole region of the map. And the only thing standing in the way of that happening and succeeding was the Sikh community. And the attack on the Hamda Sahib was part of that, James. So the geopolitics at the time, I have to say, were absolutely fascinating.
And still are. We're looking at, at a lot of different things within the geopolitical landscape of the world today. We learn a lot, and mistakes were made, and, but there were also successes, and now we're seeing the same thing, mistakes being made and other successes around the world. But come on, Angus, Russia wouldn't want to take over or annex other territories, would they?
Let's not go down that rabbit hole. We might be here for a while. But TC actually sums it up quite perfectly, using a phrase that did actually come out at the end of the podcast, and that was dirty and lawless. Sums it up very aptly. Yes, indeed. As Bhajan said, India's actions have been dirty and lawless over many years. Now, of course, there is an element of double standards here. Of course, the CIA and all intelligence agencies, they operate in a very shadowy world. And of course, the work that they do is quite often, it's certainly dirty, and quite often it can be quite lawless because, as I say, they do operate beneath the radar, beneath the surface. But certainly what India has been up to, as you say, TC, and it was brought out in the podcast, dirty and lawless. That is the nature of intelligence work and international dirty work, James.
Absolutely, and it's not going to end. It's just a dirty political game that goes in circles until you get dizzy, fall down, and get up and do it all over again, Angus.
Indeed. And 1S1N2 refers to, there was a book actually that Bhajan has written with, in conjunction with Peter Friedrich, I think, and Peter Friedrich, another well-known activist and author. I've been trying to get hold of him for the podcast, actually. Anyway, they wrote this fascinating book called Kite Flights, which Bhajan referred to. And when I went in to ask how you can get hold of this book, and he's written many other books, I did ask Badjan over the weekend. He has responded, but not very clearly. So I'm still trying to find that out. When I find out, I will let you know, and I'll either mention it on the show or put it into the description of the podcast. But I have noted your comment, and I have asked Badjan for a definitive answer. I did look myself, and I can't find how you get hold of his books, but I will get back to you on that one. Now, Kamal Jitsuki asks, please ask him who killed Shahid Dr. Pritam Singh Sekam. Now, this Shahid, this martyr, he was a very high-profile figure back in the 80s. He led the KLF, the Khalistan Liberation Force, very well known, and I have to say, again, another one of these heroic fighters fighting back against this dreadful persecution and oppression and massacre of the Sikh community back in the 1980s. And he led one of these militant bands who were desperately fighting back against the Indian state, the KLF. Now, I have to say, I did myself try to Google and research how Dr. Pritam Singh Sekho lost his life, and in my cursory research when I was rushing, I couldn't actually find the story about how he died. It seems to be sort of couched in a slight bit of mystery. So your question is very pertinent. I will ask Badjan Singh Binder about that. Maybe that will form the topic of a podcast, because I say when I looked at the life of Dr. Pritam Singh Sekho, and again, a highly educated guy. This is again another Sikh who was very respected in society. He was a doctor. He gave up his high position in society to take the battle back to India to fight on behalf of the Sikh community. He took up arms against the Indian state, this massive Indian oppression, this persecution against the community, and he sacrificed everything, all the way up to sacrificing his own life for the cause. So again, a highly respected Shahid, and a fascinating story, James. Yet another member of the Sikh community who laid down his life, literally fighting to protect their existence.
Yeah, and it's interesting how deep it goes in terms of trying to, some of the state information, they work to try and scrub the internet of information as well. As much as they want to misdirect and put misinformation, they scrub facts and truth from the internet so that you can't learn about the reality and the real facts that of atrocities that they've committed towards the Sikh community. And this very well could be one, or it could just be that there's not a lot of documentation available. So again, if you know more about this for our viewers out there, by all means, share with us.
Yeah, that's a very good point, James, because the only information I could find out about him, of course, was on Sikh sites who were preserving, archiving this vital information, this vital history that, of course, India is doing its level best to destroy and, as you say, scrub from the internet. So, yeah, very good point. Right. That. Free Spirit, yes, we talked about, actually in that show last week, we said, look, why hasn't the UK got a Sikh regiment? We've had a Sikh regiment in the past. They served with absolute honour throughout the First World War and prior to that. And indeed, I think was it the Second World War as well. But we since lost the Sikh regiment, and we need a Sikh regiment. And I, as I said at the time last week, it would be a fantastic campaign to get behind. I certainly would throw the full force of my weight, whatever little weight that is, behind the establishment of a Sikh regiment. Free Spirit says, look, you said if you were to hazard a guess regarding the perceptions of Gurkhas and Sikhs, because of course I did say, look, the Gurkhas got their own regiment. And what you think is the Gurkhas didn't militarily fight against the British, but the Sikhs did. Well, actually, Free Spirit, I need to correct you on that. The Gurkhas did, in fact, fight against the British. This is why the British created a Gurkha regiment, because of it, the story was so similar to the Sikhs, but for some reason the Gurkhas got their own regiment and kept their regiment. The Sikhs didn't. I'm just going to quickly read you. This is actually from the Gurkhas' own website. This basically summarises in the fastest way possible about the Gurkhas, just so for those who might not know the story of the Gurkhas. In the Anglo-Nepali War, because the Gurkhas come from Nepal, the Anglo-Nepali War between 1814 to 1816, the year's Gurkha incursions into northern India led to a declaration of war on Nepal by the British East India Company in November 1814. Of course, this is the same. This reflects back into the Sikh Empire. Again, it was the British East India Company who in the end declared war on the Sikh Empire as well. It was a strange war for the time, with both sides behaving honourably, controlling looting and respecting non-combatants. Technology favoured the British and terrain, Technology favoured the British and the terrain favoured the Gurkhas. So again, parallels with the Sikh Empire. A mutual respect developed, and when the war ended with the Treaty of Seguli in 1816, both sides decided that they would be better as friends rather than enemies. And from that point, the Gurkha regiments began to be raised as part of the East Indies Company's army. And of course, then they evolved into the British Army. So the parallels there, James, are fascinating. Is that yes, the British came up against the Gurkhas in Nepal. We did totally respect their prowess in battle. They fought like absolute demons. But more importantly, they fought honourably and they treated non-combatants with respect. They controlled the looting, which again was against the prevailing way of the times. But they were such respected, revered soldiers by the British Army that they sat down with the Nepalese and said with the Gurkhas and said, "Look, actually, you came up against us. We won, but by heck, you were honourable, heroic soldiers. We would like to work with you. We'd like you to form regiments within the British Army." Now, this is what happens with the Sikh Empire. Exactly the same, in fact, but on a grander scale, on a bigger scale, and this makes it a bit more mysterious. On a bigger scale, the Sikh Empire came up against the British East India Company, and as a result of this mutual respect, is that the Sikhs were then absorbed into the British Army, or they formed Sikh regiments in the British Army. But then the Sikh regiments disappeared. And that's something I haven't researched. And James, I think that is something I will have to research. Why were the Sikh regiments removed from the British Army? Because why don't we get them back? Because they are a massive loss to the British Army. Yes, we have Sikhs within the British Army, but there's only a few hundred and they're scattered amongst different regiments. We need a Sikh regiment because, and again, back to the original point, because what that would do for the Sikh community in the UK would be massive. Because the Gurkhas have such a high profile in Britain, primarily because they have their regiments, which is again very high profile. In terms of PR, public relations, it is a massive tool. It's done so much for the Gurkha community. Why do we not have Sikh regiments so that the Sikh community can get an equal standing, an equal amount of PR with the British public? Because then the British public would be more aware, firstly, of their military prowess, their military history, and of course their cultural history, but of course it would mean so much more about educating the wider British community about the Sikh community and what a positive contribution they make to British society, James.
Well, and I think that in some regards, excuse me, sorry about that. I think that in some regards, Angus, it's been the equality and the diversification and trying to integrate everybody into the different departments and different regiments. And I think that there's also a point that a lot of the other military personnel can learn a lot from the Sikhs, and it could very well be that they wanted to spread them out so that they could actually teach and share knowledge and experience with each other. And again, it's also about the diversity, that they want to not appear that they are segregating different groups and different communities as well. And again, it just goes back and forth. And I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to this. I think it's just different perceptions. And, and unfortunately, it is these, what could be very powerful in terms of the Sikh regiment, is being lost out by the diversification and the concern of optics. And a lot of times that's what it comes down to. It's optics as opposed to reality, Angus.
Indeed, and NSL also agrees with that. It would, as you say, unify the Sikhs of the UK, but and as I say, it would also educate the rest of the UK about the massive contribution that Sikhs make to the history of this nation as well. So, anyway, final set of comments, James. Surjit Kalair says, Angus and James, happy Holi on Kalsa de Holla. Of course, this other festival, we had Holla de Maholla, Holla Malhalla over the weekend, celebrated right across the world, right across the diaspora, and of course in Amritsar itself. And of course, before that was Happy Holi, which is the masculine form of Holla, Mahala. And the same to you, Surjit Kalair. Thank you for that. Mankind's Success says, we're doing great journalism, having the very true understanding of issues and brave personalities. This is a little bit of self-indulgence, James. It's just, again, a few representative thanks and appreciations from our audience. And Hardal Singh also says, thanks and welcome to the programme. The best of the best show. Well, thank you for that. I would never claim to be best of the best, but we do our best, James. And then, as you say, keep laughing. Friends of mine are watching the show. Oh, gosh, James, we better keep laughing. We're entertaining. I think we're comedians once again.
We try, Angus, and let's face it, it's all about if you don't laugh, you cry, right? We'd much rather laugh, wouldn't we?
Well, I think that's the only thing we can do to keep going. And I'll leave the final comment of the show, a lovely comment this from Human, who says the world would be safer, a more compassionate place with Khalsa values. And of course, this does refer back to even AI, which confirmed, James, as you said, even AI confirmed that the Sikh religion is the one religion that would be the best for humanity. And as Human says, Sikhs have worked with the most economical weak society and offer support of hope and love. Yes, selfless service, save our society needs this model. Profits all over the world make the world vulnerable. The poor suffer the most, indeed they do. Love and compassion is the only way they can live in peace with whatever minimum income they have. That's possible with Khalsa values. Well, I couldn't put that better myself, James.
Exactly, right. Just perfectly stated. Thank you for sharing that.
Indeed. So a lovely comment. Thanks for that, Human. But that does very conveniently bring us on a very nice note to the end of the show. That was, of course, Perspectives for another day. Please do keep those comments coming in. Much appreciated to all those who have commented. Loads of great comments and fascinating comments that come in. So thank you for all of those. And thank you, as always, for all the appreciative comments. We do read every single comment. So thank you and do keep them coming. Don't forget, you can message us directly at message@satellitetv.com if there's any you'd like to bring to our attention directly. But in the meantime, that is it for Perspectives for another day. Thanks so much for watching. Thanks for your loyalty. It is a goodbye from me. It is a goodbye from James.
Stay safe, everyone.
You have, of course, been watching Perspectives. We will see you next time.